All right, a potential deal in Iran, but the details are sketchy tonight. Let's check it out. And welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. So late this morning, you probably saw the news. It broke from several different outlets. Negotiators from both Iran and the United States had agreed on this much anticipated Memorandum of Understanding, which is what they've been calling it. The media claiming that it's essentially a deal before the deal to open up the Strait of Hormuz for everyone. The media and Axios reporting that includes Iran as well, opening up the strait for everybody. Axios reporting the deal will extend the ceasefire, allow unrestricted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which will get our oil prices down, and begin nuclear negotiations. They said the deal now awaits approval from the President of the United States. But if Axios and other outlets actually have the facts straight on this, which we don't know that they do, the question would be, if they did, why would he ever sign a deal like this? A deal that ends the Iranian blockade before nuclear negotiations even begin? That would make no sense. It would be a gift to a lying regime before we obtain anything tangible at all. So as this stirred around for a couple hours, we all waited for the press briefing today. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually handled the media for Caroline Leavitt today. It was kind of tough to decipher where we're at with this thing, but his clarification, I thought, indicates that the media doesn't exactly have the full story straight. Here is the Treasury Secretary.
President Trump has made it very clear he has several red lines, and Iran has to turn over their highly enriched uranium. They cannot pursue a nuclear weapon, and the Strait of Hormuz has to be free and open as it was before. So he's not going to take a bad deal. He's going to make a great deal for the American people.
Is sanctions relief for Iran on the table?
Again, it is a multifaceted agreement, and nothing is going to be on the table until we see the Strait of Hormuz open. They have to turn over the highly enriched uranium, and that they can't have a nuclear program.
So without saying it, too explicitly about exactly what this is, Bessent did maintain that the deal being reported is potentially a bit off the mark. Perhaps the Strait of Hormuz would open, but the blockade on Iran would remain until we get the uranium out of the country, which is not being reported at all by these media outlets about what this potential deal looks like. What Bessent explained would actually make a lot more sense, right? Why would you reward the endlessly lying and evil terror regime that is running the nation of Iran before it actually gives us anything tangible? Here's a little bit more from the Treasury Secretary.
We can see that the president very clearly stated his three: open the strait, highly enriched uranium, no nuclear program. So
are those things part of the temporary deal right now, sir? Are those three aspects that you just outlined part of the temporary deal that has been agreed?
That if there can be no deal without those, why would there be a deal without those?
Okay, so with that, let's discuss this. Open the strait, right? Open the strait, removal of enriched uranium, and no nuclear program at all. Let's talk about this. Richard Goldberg, former director for countering Iranian weapons of mass destruction for the White House National Security Council. He joins us now. Robert Spalding is a retired Air Force Brigadier General. Gentlemen, good to have you both here. Richard, I want to start with you. The deal being reported in the media by Axios and others, it actually sounds like a pretty bad deal, something you wouldn't want to sign, ending the blockade on Iran with just a promise to negotiate nuclear in the future. That can't be what this is, right?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, if this was the deal on the table, it would signal really desperation from the president that he just needs to get the strait open at pretty much any cost. You'd be trading blockade for the Strait of Hormuz and potentially even more money after that, of allowing them full oil sanctions relief, and maybe even money opened up in Qatar and Oman. You would definitely not be able to get a negotiation to get the enriched uranium out of Iran, let alone any dismantlement of underground facilities. So I agree with your presentation. I think it would make a lot more sense to have, the blockade in place, clamp it down, get the strait open, and then use that leverage to make sure that they actually do allow us to come in, or the IAEA in Vienna to come in and get all the enriched uranium out and start dismantling their nuclear sites. Otherwise, I think you're just trading blockade for Strait of Hormuz, and you never get to the rest.
You never really get anywhere. General Spalding, your thoughts on the idea that potentially there would be a deal that would open up the blockade before we even get the uranium or even talk nuclear?
I think you have to look at it from the IRGC's point of view. You know, one of the things that I'm sure they're looking at is the president's stress about the midterm elections coming up. And so it could be that they want to drag this out and see how that turns out. And, you know, if the president is really concerned about the price of oil and gas at the pump, then, you know, this could be creating pressure within the administration to make a deal that's not really the right deal. Of course, he said he's not going to do that. So I think we're going to see more of this back and forth because we're dealing with an IRGC that really you can't trust them. And they're thinking, you know, they can get through this by putting pressure on the administration because of the midterms.
It's Richard. I mean, how do we get out of this successfully? At this point, it's starting to seem like it's getting a little dicey on what we can actually get that's tangible from Iran, and it seems like they're definitely playing the same game that they usually do.
Well, the move that made sense from the start was to keep the blockade, squeeze them. They are hemorrhaging money. I mean, they cannot sustain this blockade, plus everything that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is doing from the Treasury Department, which is just amazing. We've never seen sanctions enforcement like this in our lives, quite frankly. Yeah. Then you actually move our own naval forces in with our Air Force covers, and hopefully with our allies in the Gulf in their partnership. It would be great if the Europeans join in. And you open the Gulf yourself. We did it for 24 to 36 hours through Project Freedom. If you are able to allow transit through the Strait of Hormuz without cutting any deal, and you keep the blockade in place, and the whole world is, you know, basically switching onto the U.S. as a supplier of choice for energy, and over time the Strait of Hormuz becomes irrelevant as pipelines are built, you win. It's checkmate for this regime. Yeah. It's over.
Well, and Richard, just to stay with you for a second, the allegation being made by a lot of people we talk to on this show is that Lloyd's of London, the insurance brokers for these ships, is the reason that's not possible. They're the ones holding the ships back, saying if you get blown up going through there, we're not covering you.
I don't agree with that. I've been working this since day one. We have insurance solutions, both from the Department of Transportation and Marine Administration that have the War Risk Insurance Fund. Yeah. We have the Development Finance Corporation with Chubb Insurance, offering up to $60 billion. The Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, these are very wealthy nations that want to get their product to market. They can also self-insure.
So then why aren't these ships moving through at this point then?
This has been a security issue. The mariners are afraid to go through. They think the missiles and drones will get through. They don't have protection, which is why Project Freedom was a demonstration that we could provide pretty much zone defense and help guide them through.
General Spalding, on that, and as the idea of securing this strait, leaving the blockade in place, securing the strait, these ships can move, oil comes down, you keep Iran starving. Does that work?
I said from the beginning that's what we needed to do, and quite frankly, I don't know why we aren't doing it now. You know, that's the answer: is get the ships moving, keep the blockade on, keep the pressure on. You know, I doubt you're going to get to deal with the IRGC, so you just have to create the solution that takes Iran off the table in terms of providing that stress on, you know, the price of gas at the pump.
Okay. I got to leave it there. Richard Goldberg, Robert Spalding, gentlemen, good to have you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving along now to Senator Tommy Tuberville, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And, sir, good to have you. I want to start with Iran, and the reporting on this indicates that this deal that the president may or may not sign would open up the Strait of Hormuz and also allow Iran to start selling oil as well, giving them the financial lifeline that they need in this moment. And then we start negotiating nuclear, which sounds like we're giving up quite a bit before we get anywhere with Iran. What are your thoughts on what's being reported today?
Well, first of all, you got to give credit to President Trump. He's trying to get a square peg into a round hole. He's dealing with mass murderers, Rob, and you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's in charge. I've been in a lot of classified hearings. I can't say anything about that, but it's a complete mess. But President Trump's making progress. He you know, at the end of the day, everything he's doing, he doesn't know what to expect at the end of the negotiations, he doesn't know whether they're going to agree with it or they're going to go along with it or they're going to stick with it. But what I like is he's trying to put together the Abraham Accord at the same time, trying to get everybody on the same page, free up the Middle East, put all the people in the Middle East in charge of Iran instead of the United States of America. And I think that's the best thing he can do. And at the end of the day, it's a long shot.
We don't know that whether or not the quality of the reporting that we're getting on this, but I will say that to me it doesn't make any sense to open up their ability to sell oil and make a tremendous amount of money before you get something tangible on the nuclear side, before they allow us to go in and remove this uranium. I think you're just opening up, you're giving them a lifeline before we get anything back. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that's a good point. At the end of the day, we got to trust President Trump on what he's doing. We really don't know the situation behind the scenes.
Right.
Again, you got to remember the same group he's dealing with here over about, two and a half months ago, they killed 40,000 of their own people, 40,000. So it's hard to trust mass murders. But President Trump has told everybody he's going to make sure that no money goes out to the Iranians unless we get part of the plutonium or the uranium back. I mean, at the end of the day, he's negotiating that. But, the open up the straits is interesting, but it might be a ploy to get them to make some kind of deal that they're not getting.
Yeah, it's again, how much everything that he said about the Obama nuclear deal, it doesn't lend me to think that he would actually go for something like this. And maybe that's why we haven't heard anything directly indicating that he's going to go for it at all. Maybe they're trying to figure something out with this and what they're leaking out. You never really know. I want to talk to you about a couple other things before I let you go. Let's talk about what we saw in Texas this week. You got Cornyn out, Cassidy, both of them ousted, two of your colleagues. The president backing Ken Paxton in that Texas election. That was a big move, a very bold move for the president, not to go with the incumbent, to go with the challenger. Do you think that the president made that move and withheld that long enough to figure out whether or not he was going to get his way with the SAVE Act with John Thune? Was that a message to say, if you're going to ignore me on something that I really want, I'm not going to help you?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think it all stemmed from Cassidy losing, and then what happens next? Out comes the new bill about weaponization that they want to attach to the reconciliation. We had a blow up in the caucus meeting. President Trump says enough's enough. 77 million people voted to put me in office to change things around, and he's not getting any help out of the Senate. I mean, we haven't done anything other than a big, beautiful bill in a year and a half, Rob, and we're running out of time. So he change your guard in the Senate. That's what he wants. You're
going to be a governor soon. You're running the Senate is about over. Do you think that in the Senate, as you look at how it works and how it operates, and you can probably be more open about it now, do you think that Republican senators simply are looking forward to the end of this administration so they can return to the way the Senate behaved in the past, when it was more of a uniparty kind of chamber and it wasn't so divided?
I think maybe a few of them, but most of them, they want to make changes, but you can't get any changes if you don't have enough people to vote. Everybody says, well, bust the filibuster. I said, wait a minute, it takes 51 to bust the filibuster. We can't get 45 votes in the Republican side because we have so many people that don't believe in doing that. And so president's between a rock and a hard place here. He wants to make a deal, like with Iran. He wants to make a deal with the Senate, but he doesn't have enough people working with him, and that's what he's trying to change.
Yeah, it's such a tricky chamber that you're in. And the relationship with the president's very interesting. And now Cassidy and Cornyn are both gone, and John Thune can't be happy about that. He likes you, though, Senator Tommy Tuberville. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. It was a story that reeked of BS the whole time. The DOJ now investigating E. Jean Carroll over her outrageous claims against Trump. That's coming up. And then later in news from the left, Jimmy Kimmel's arrogant attack on Spencer Pratt's L.A. mayoral campaign.
Immuno 50 may be the best food supplement in the world because it contains 70 plant minerals and 80 other nutrients. The 3 videos on our website tell you how this product and 7 times more minerals can improve your health.
250 years ago, a nation was forged by grit, by courage, by freedom. Today we raise a glass to that same spirit. 4547 Straight Bourbon Whiskey, the 250th anniversary edition. Bold, independent, unmistakably American. Toast to independence this year. Built by patriots, for patriots. Order yours today.
As a landowner, there's always work to do, but it's the land that decides what needs doing. From the backyard to the back 40, Mahindras get it done. Our tough compacts make working a few acres as easy as can be. These mid-sized powerhouses don't quit when the job gets tougher, and this 4-ton workhorse can clear a pasture by dinner. Nothing can outlive, outlast, and outdo like a Mahindra. Mahindra, outworking the field. Get 0% for 84 months and $2,000 cash back on the 1100 and 2100 series.
Immuno 50 may be the best food supplement in the world because it contains 70 plant minerals and 80 other nutrients. The 3 videos on our website tell you how this product and 7 times more minerals can improve your health.
Well, it reeked of a political scam, and now the Justice Department is investigating E. Jean Carroll, the lunatic who waited decades to accuse Trump of sexual assault in the mid-1990s. The DOJ is probing whether Carroll committed perjury during testimony tied to her civil lawsuit. New York jury awarding her over $83 million. Such a ridiculous case all around. Prosecutors reportedly focusing on a 2022 deposition with Carroll, where she stated that she had received no outside funding for her lawsuit, although billionaire LinkedIn left-wing founder Reid Hoffman admitted to heavily bankrolling her crusade to destroy Donald Trump. Oh, she forgot about that, I guess. Carroll claiming she and Trump were flirting at Bergdorf's, the department store in Manhattan. And Trump invited her into a dressing room to try on lingerie, and she happily went inside, and then claims that there was sex and it was not consensual. There were no witnesses, of course. There's no security footage of Trump at the store in the dressing room back in 1996. She couldn't even, there we go, remember even the year that it happened. And then the Donna Karan dress that she claimed to have worn during the assault. Oh, yeah, the dress didn't even exist yet. Didn't exist for several years after the allegations of assault. You add to that her 2019 allegations mimic a Law and Order episode from 2012 perfectly, and she is a storyteller. You put all that together, and then you take a look at the alleged victim herself and her behavior. Go ahead.
It was just like, we're going to do this thing. We're just so hot for each other. I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
We're just going to take a quick break. If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to. 7 or 8 weeks from now, you're going to have the thighs of a 4-year-old. I personally, I have blue balls all over my house.
Chasing men is the highest amusement there is, but manhandling the difficult little buggers is something else.
Yeah, I gotta be f***able. This is a word.
Marky, Fortuna de la Spunky, Heidi, Tits.
A jury gave that $83 million. The dress wasn't made yet, doesn't know the year it happened, $83 million. Pray that you never go to trial in New York as a conservative. Michael Knowles joins us now, host of the Michael Knowles Show. Good to see you. Your thoughts on the new investigation into perjury for E. Jean Carroll? It seems like there's something there.
Well, a shocking headline about that paragon of credibility, E. Jean Carroll. Thank you, Rob, for that trip down memory lane. In her defense, she might not have remembered that she accepted all that money from the liberal billionaire, contrary to her testimony, because she didn't seem to remember much of anything about the alleged assault. Let's not forget that the alleged assault occurred sometime in the 90s, we're told, but E. Jean Carroll couldn't even say what year it occurred in. And then she only seemed to remember it a couple of decades later when President Trump conveniently was running for president. So, oopsie daisy, I guess this really central fact about the case seemed to slip her memory, and she might have perjured herself. Unfortunately for her, you can get away with a lot of lies on CNN or in the liberal media. But when you commit lies under oath, sometimes there are consequences.
There can be consequences. Let's play Reid Hoffman. This is a billionaire. This is a left-wing activist billionaire that wants nothing more to destroy Donald Trump. Here he is talking about just how badly he wanted to help E. Jean Carroll get this job done.
My team looked at it and thought that it was that her voice should be heard, that because she was challenging someone who's so much more wealthy and powerful, it shouldn't be squashed, and that providing that voice for people who are otherwise would be ground down by the system.
It reminds me of Kavanaugh, too, and you just wonder, there's people out there that probably say, wow, we have somebody that is willing to kind of go through this with this allegation. Let's back it. I mean, if you're trying to destroy Donald Trump and you've got a fortune of money and you see somebody that can make an allegation like this that can be campaign ending, I mean, why not just throw everything behind it? She's going to take all the risk, right? You're just dumping cash on her.
What's so amazing about President Trump is he's very publicly lived a very colorful life. And yet the guy appears to be way more squeaky clean than anybody seemed to have thought. If E. Jean Carroll is the most credible accuser that you can find against him, that's a pretty sorry state for the people who are going after Trump. This reminds me of the political wisdom from The Wire, which is that if you come for the king, you best not miss. The Democrats made such outrageous and preposterous claims about him over the years. They accused him of colluding with the Russians, and then ironically colluding with the Ukrainians who were at war with the Russians, and this and that, and some craziness in Bergdorf Goodman with the lady who says that rape is sexy on Anderson Cooper's show. Even Anderson Cooper is embarrassed to have her on the show. None of that really worked. The American people saw through that. And so now people are going to be held to account because not only did this woman commit a crime, apparently, allegedly in this case, but what they're doing is really undermining the entire American system of government, whether you're talking about the frivolous allegations against Justice Kavanaugh or the frivolous allegations against President Trump. And so it's actually a matter of political importance that we correct this stuff and we don't let the bad guys get away with it.
You said that so perfectly. And again, just to remind everybody, you go back into the mid-1990s and you have Donald Trump, probably the most eligible bachelor in the country. You have an extraordinarily promiscuous woman at a department store. You've got lingerie, an invitation that she accepts to come into a dressing room. I mean, it just for so many different reasons. And then on the other side of it, you got a dress that wasn't even made yet. You got a woman that says she can't remember the year, waits 20 to 25 years to even say anything about it. Nothing about the story adds up at all. And I think a lot of people understand that. But a jury in New York somehow was convinced of this. And that's what's amazing. Michael Knowles, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. Two candidates now pulling away from the rest of the field in the California gubernatorial race. Steve Hilton is right there near the top, but he is up against a very corrupt machine that owns the unions, that owns the special interests. Can he win? He joins us next. Everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Spring. It's time to run it. Run it until the grass becomes a lawn, until the hedge is dug and covered. Then, run it again.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
Hello, this is WWE Hall of Fame wrestler Mick Foley. Across this great country, there are thousands of veterans with no place to call home. They deserve better. Welcome to my new home. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation is committed to eradicating veteran homelessness by providing housing and critical services. Couldn't ask for anything more. Please help by donating $11 a month at T2T.org. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Let us do good.
Sir, he's here to see you.
So, are you ready to join forces? PCMag provides complete protection for your computer and smartphone against malware and ransomware, and it's 100% American-made and supported security.
Today, Cyberman and his unknown partner delivered a massive victory, protecting homes, businesses, and federal devices from ransomware.
Get protected now at PCMatic.com.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe Crohn's disease symptoms can keep coming back. Break away to what's possible with Tremfya. Tremfya can help with remission at 12 weeks, 1 year, and 2 years. Some had visible repair of their intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Break away with Tremfya. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
Hi, I'm Arthur Lee, CEO, inventor of LifeVac, the only FDA-cleared airway clearance device that saves a life in a choking emergency. Over 5,000 people a year choke to death, one child every 5 days. Please consider protecting your family, your business, your loved ones. Go to lifevac.net today.
All right, less than a week until California's primary elections. A new poll shows Biden's health secretary, Xavier Becerra, and Republican Steve Hilton pulling away from the rest of the field. You see it there. Becerra at 23, Hilton at 20. If these numbers hold, they'll be the two that advance and face off in November. It is the most expensive race for governor in California's history. Nearly $80 million dumped in from outside groups. That's double the amount that Newsom saw when he ran in 2018 in that race. Becerra benefiting massively from over $13 million in donations from corporations and special interest groups, including unions. This is how Democrats stay in power in the state. And according to Cal Matters, after Swalwell dropped out, more than 500 of his campaign donors went straight to Xavier Becerra. The Republican candidate, Steve Hilton, however, has the most total donors in the race, over 20,000 so far, a lot of them small donations. That's what authentic support in a gubernatorial race looks like. The question is, can that win? Steve Hilton joins us now, and I know how busy, how hard you've worked, sir. I want to ask you a question. One of my good friends lives in Manhattan Beach, and he puts it this way about California politics. Paid attention for a long time. He says Democrats arrive with basically millions of votes automatically in the bag. They have greased up every single union, and those unions force every single member to vote Democrat no matter who the candidate is. They've bribed every special interest group. Everyone is tethered. Everybody that is tethered to the government in some way is just an automatic Democrat vote. And that's why California is so messed up.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. This machine is totally corrupt because, of course, the unions get favors from the Democrat politicians, and then they return the favor with their donations and their volunteers and all the rest of it. That's exactly the business model. But, of course, the results are such a disaster in California. That's why we're seeing such energy for change, both in my campaign and Spencer's in L.A. for mayor as well. People are sick of it. We're sick of the crime and the chaos, the cost, the gas prices, the highest. We know the list of everything that's gone wrong. And I think you're seeing something. There's something happening in California. There's actually a couple of other numbers I'd give you, as well as the donors that were reported in that survey you just saw. If you look at the total number of small donors, including the ones that are really under the limit that was in that previous one, it's 75,000 small donors supporting me. I've never run for office before. That's from nothing. The other number, Tom Steyer, the climate fanatic billionaire, he's spent just of his own money $216 million trying to buy this race. And he's still not cracking the top two. So I don't know. Something's happening. People want change here in California.
What's your message to all of those union employees that have the union bosses telling them you've got to vote for the Democrat because that's how that's how this whole scam works, right? What's your message to those people to get them to break that?
So I'll just say very clearly, Democrats have given you the highest housing costs in the country. Most union members can't afford to own their own home. The highest electric bills and gas prices. Your kids go to schools where they're barely educated. Instead, they're indoctrinated. The chaos on the streets, that's the result of a machine that's been in power for 16 years with no checks, no balances. We need change. We need some balance. It's not healthy to have one party running everything for so long. That's why I think that this year is going to be different in California.
I want to ask you about the man that'll likely be your rival, Xavier Becerra, part of an administration that lost hundreds of thousands of migrant kids after they blew up the southern border. The Government Accountability Institute says he has major ties to open border nonprofits connected to the Mexican government. Unidos US, one of them, Council of La Raza. It's another group called Shirla, I should say, who Becerra described as family. They mobilize anti-ICE rallies. They deploy legal observers at ICE operations. We now have openly, I would say, treasonous operators that are running for office in the United States, not even hiding their anti-American allegiance and their agenda, colluding with foreign interests to try and get office in this country. I can't believe we allow this.
I know, and that organization, Chirla, we need to remember that name. I think there's going to be a lot of problems from Javier Becerra coming from that organization. Remember, it's mainly a government organization. 85% of its income comes from California taxpayers. Also, we did an investigation from Cal Doge, which found that in their own reports of what they do with that money, Chirla is paying for illegal immigrants to campaign in their political campaigns they support, including Javier Becerra. So it's California taxpayer money going to pay for illegal immigrants. All of that is illegal. This group has an office in Mexico funded by California taxpayers teaching illegal immigrants how to get into the country illegally. It's insane. And that is going to come back and bite Javier Becerra when he's in the general election. We're going to make sure of that.
I was just going to say the same thing. Put that on billboards. I mean, it's so vile what they have done in that state, what we've done to this country. It's just unbelievable what that party gets away with. Steve Hilton fighting a great fight. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be with you.
All right. Dr. Jill says she thought her husband was having a stroke during that infamous 2024 presidential debate and claims that was the first time she ever saw any sign of dementia.
As I watched it, I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke.
IRS. 3 letters that strike fear into everyone, and for good reason. The IRS is the most powerful collection agency on earth, and being in debt to the IRS can have serious consequences. Oftentimes it begins with the IRS sending you a collection letter, but then escalates. And before you know it, you're having your paychecks garnished, your bank account seized, even your home or business could be at risk.
My problem was I hadn't paid my taxes in 8 years. I was trying to take on the IRS by myself. I have 5 children, I'm trying to take care of my kids, and it was a lot of stress.
I owed the IRS over $10,000. They told me the possibilities of garnishing my wages to resolve this debt that I owed them.
I owed a lot of money to the IRS, almost $15,000. Well, there was nothing I could do about it. I was just overwhelmed at what to do.
These stories are all too common, but thankfully there's Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 most trusted tax resolution firm. Optima's experts have helped thousands of people with stories just like these resolve their tax debt.
I owe $15,000. I only had to pay $3,500, and now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything. It was easy, like 1, 2, 3.
Since I've settled everything with the IRS, with Optima Tax help, I'm going to be able to succeed instead of just worry.
They sent the paperwork in for the debt to be cleared, the liens to be taken off. Now I'm a happy camper now. If you owe the IRS, don't go it alone. Give Optima Tax a call.
So don't wait. Today you have options. Tomorrow you might not. Optima's tax professionals are standing by, ready to help you now.
For a free consultation, call 800-375-1215. That's 800-375-1215.
Optima Tax Relief.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Doctors recommend turmeric more than any other supplement for joint health. I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric, made with the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric, clinically tested to support joint health and a healthy inflammation response. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Speaking, unruly.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler is once again alive and well.
This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
I was frightened because I had never, ever seen Joe like that before or since.
You've never seen him like that?
No.
What happened?
I don't know what happened. I mean, as I watched it, I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. And it scared me to death.
Okay. Jill Biden there, the doctor, giving us what she says is the real story about Joe Biden's big debate disaster back in 2024. She thought that her husband had had a stroke, is what she's saying now. Dr. Jill has a new memoir that's coming out next week. View from the East Wing, they call it. So this, of course, is a press tour, and she's also trying to rehabilitate her reputation. That rep of Dr. Jill's was trashed. Many Democrats blame her for covering up Joe's clear diminished condition until it was far too late. And they believe that she, in large part, cost them the 2024 election. Jill Biden literally said this in this same interview. Take a listen.
Did you ever see signs that he was falling into cognitive decline?
No.
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 Truly?
No.
I mean, people were saying he wasn't the same Joe Biden.
Well, I don't think that's true. Yeah, he was slowing down. He was getting older. I mean, we all observe that. It's a very intense job. I think it ages you quickly.
So process for a moment the idea that she's trying to tell us that Jill Biden was the only person in the country that didn't notice that Joe Biden was clearly incapable of handling the job of the presidency and clearly was mentally diminished, especially in the last couple years of the presidency. She was the only one that didn't know. The Atlantic got an advance copy of this book, of course. The magazine reports Jill Biden was worried that her husband was potentially drugged on debate night. So she's really going with this. The quote is he short-circuiting, Joe Biden thought, claiming Joe Biden recounting in the book, is this a stroke or has he been drugged? So she's going to pretend that he was fine up until that night. She had never seen any indication that he couldn't be the president of the United States. And with that, we're going to bring in Rick Leventhal, host of the Leventhal Report on N2. Rick, good to see you. I want to start with just your reaction to the claims that Dr. Jill is making.
Rob, we watched him decline, and it's not funny, but it's funny because of the way she's behaving, trying to rewrite history. We watched him fall downstairs, fall upstairs, trip on stage, fall off his bike, unable to finish sentences, trail off, stare up into space, shake hands with people who weren't there, walk the wrong way. People had to write everything down on note cards for this guy so he would know when to sit, when to stand. He was clearly not himself, clearly diminished and getting worse and worse. And for her to sit there and say, oh, the only time I saw it was on debate night, she's flat out lying.
Right.
And it's a shame that she would go down this road instead of being honest with the American people.
The Atlantic quotes Dr. Jill recounting in her book that as the president walked off the stage, he whispered to Jill, I really effed up, didn't I? And she whispered back, yes, you did. She was worried, Rick, that he had a stroke. But then, after worrying that he might have had a stroke, she doesn't take him to a hospital after the debate. She takes him to multiple debate after parties. Here she was with him on stage after that debate, talking to him like he's a 5-year-old boy that just did his first spelling bee.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do?
Ah! Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You just want to be the President of the United States. Let's give you a participation trophy because you answered every question.
Exactly. She should have handed him one of those little gold trophies. That's what I was going to say. Answered every question. Yeah, isn't that his job? And he didn't answer them well, by the way. He wasn't on his game because he hadn't been on his game in years. Yeah. He was getting worse and worse and worse. She knows as well as anybody that this guy was fading fast. And yet she was trying to prop him up to run for president again, even after all of this. So, you know, she is a hypocrite. She's a liar. And she was trying to pull the wool over the American people's eyes, but we all saw it for ourselves. So
well, she loved
her trying to rewrite history now is, yeah.
She didn't want to leave the White House, so she was going to do everything she could to keep Joe in there, even if the job killed him. She wanted to stay and remain, getting on the cover of Vogue, being the first lady, and all of that. Very selfish, I would say, for Joe Biden's second wife. The media also,
they had the auto pen.
Yeah, there you go. It's really all they needed, right? As the media covered all of this up, as they did very obviously through those, especially those last couple years, acting like there's nothing to see here and just pretending that this wasn't a huge problem. They're now all obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with our current president's health and his cognitive abilities, despite the fact that we just watched him in a cabinet meeting yesterday just rattle off a zillion different answers to every random question that reporters could think of. What do you make of that? I mean, they're obsessed with this thing on the president's hand, but again, they're ignoring the fact that every day he's taken 20, 30 questions. Take a listen to this.
You know who had his third trip to Walter Reed Medical Center in 13 months.
His physical and mental health are under a growing spotlight.
This is the oldest president to ever be inaugurated.
Questions over bruising on his hands and swelling around his ankles.
Here you can see the president's badly swollen ankles. Look at this. Yeah. See the pictures there.
Trump has also been caught falling asleep at official events recently, many times.
The president has severe daytime somnolence. He falls asleep very often. Chronic insomnia is a severe illness.
So, Rick, when you hear the president speak, it's very clear cognitively he's right where he has been the whole time. It seems to me that the media thinks that the condition of your right hand is more important than the condition of your brain if you're running the United States of America, or at least that's the way they behave.
I mean, they're actually shocked that a 79-year-old man might go to the doctor 3 times in 13 months. I can tell you, I've been more than that. Okay, and I'm a very old 66. This guy is a machine. He barely sleeps. He is more transparent than any president in modern memory. He talks to the press 5 times a day, 10 times a day sometimes. He can answer every question. He's obviously very, very sharp. And for them to pick at him, I mean, they do this. They've been doing this for more than 10 years. Every story is negative about the president. So, of course, they're going to hammer him on his health or lack of it or poor health when, in fact, he seems pretty darn good to me. And he's doing a heck of a job running the White House and running this country.
But, you know, he does have a bruise on his hand, Rick. And, you know, sometimes when he only sleeps 3 hours a night, he closes his eyes during a boring meeting. So, you know, obviously he's not capable of being the President of the United States. I got to leave it there. Rick Leventhal, good to see you.
You too.
All right. Why is Hakeem Jeffries face-tuning his pictures like a 22-year-old girl on Instagram?
There's a rhythm that picks up when life slows down. When you have ATTR cardiac amyloidosis, there's still beauty to tend, still joy to gather and give. It's about living for what you love and not letting ATTRCM define who you are. Attruby is an oral medicine proven to help adults with ATTRCM live longer and have fewer hospitalizations due to heart issues. Attruby helps slow the progression of ATTRCM. Tell your doctor if you're pregnant, plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding, and about the medications you take. The most common side effects were mild and included diarrhea and abdominal pain. If you have ATTR cardiac amyloidosis, ask your cardiologist if Attruby is right for you. Time to get busy living.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date and over $1 billion in transactions, not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
If you want to be ready for summer, now's the time to call Sonobello. Sonobello helped me target the spots that diet and exercise never could.
Sonobello gave me my bikini body back.
At Sonobello, our expert surgeons remove stubborn fat permanently and tighten loose skin in one visit with less downtime. Every treatment plan is personalized for your body, your goals, and the results that you want to achieve.
Walking around this summer with my shirt off, it's the best decision I've ever made.
I see my spark back, and I am so glad that I went with Sonobello because they have truly changed my life.
With over 50,000 5-star reviews, Sonobello is America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
I love wearing a bikini again and not having to cover up.
See what's possible for you. Schedule your free consultation today.
I got my summer body at Sonobello. Get your summer body back. Do this for you.
And our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today. Call now or go to sonobello.com for your free personalized consultation. It's your life. Live it beautifully.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. New York City's socialist mayor Zoran Mamdani is again today doubling down on his plan to seize property from bad landlords. Just take their property away from them. Using the story of a beehive as an example of the kind of building that he would be happy to rip away from its owners, like the communist that he is.
You are not maintaining your responsibilities as a landlord, the city will step in. When I was asked about a specific landlord, this happens to also be a landlord of a building where there was an active beehive within the building. That's the level of disrepair that New Yorkers have been forced to live with.
Just to reiterate how ridiculous this is, the city tells the owner of a building, okay, you can only rent the units in your building for $2,000 a month, even though the market rate is $4,000 a month. And the owner of that building is now losing money on the building or maybe barely breaking even. The building falls into a dilapidated state, and his plan is to just steal it from you. After they've completely sabotaged you, they're going to steal your building from you. Welcome to New York under Zoran Mamdani. It is surreal to hear this kind of rhetoric in New York. Next up, L.A. resident Jimmy Kimmel says Spencer Pratt is a narcissist for running to change the city that is run by people who burned his house down.
His profession is to be the screaming jerk on reality shows, and his house burns down. And even though he had no private insurance on his house and doesn't believe in climate change, he is understandably upset. So then this angry reality show star, who grew up wealthy and popular and is not very wealthy or popular anymore, really starts to enjoy the attention. There's a group of people, many of whom believe themselves to be liberals, who are so angry they're willing to overlook this. They want him to be mayor. He wants to be a star again. It's exactly what Donald Trump did. Spencer Pratt, who is running for mayor, another narcissist looking for attention.
He's just such a terrible person. They burned his house down. That's why he's running. Pratt responded to Kimmel, writing simply that Jimmy's secretly voting for me. We also have another update on this race. Entertainment Weekly is reporting As Spencer Pratt says, movie superstars Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx are both privately supporting him. Of course, they can't publicly, right? Not allowed to do that in Hollywood. He says he has multiple confirmations of this. I thought that was pretty cool. Next up, after New York Giants quarterback Jackson Dart introduced the president at a rally in Suffern, New York last week, and his woke teammate Abdul Carter called him out publicly for it. Left-wing rag Midas Touch dug into Jackson's Instagram history, thinking that this was newsworthy, reporting Jackson Dart's Trump Instagram likes exposed. Writing the Giants QB liked posts include promotion of mass deportation, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, and attacks on racial curriculum in schools. Yeah, they're making it sound about as bad as possible. None of that is as it sounds. Adding, Dart follows Trump on Instagram and has liked multiple Trump posts spanning campaign rallies, endorsements, political messaging, and MAGA promotional videos. The Midas losers praying that the NFL will shun the star quarterback of the New York Giants simply for his political beliefs. It's not going to work, nerds, but keep on trying. Next up, Hakeem Jeffries is kind of like a little girl on Instagram these days, posting a picture with his Knicks hat on with a full Facetune that everybody seemed to notice. You be the judge. The side-by-side, they cleaned him up and made him pretty. Hakeem. And finally, anybody planning to attend the Transgender Period Pride Day in Boston? Because it is a real thing. Event being promoted by Michelle Wu's Office of LGBTQIA Advancement, approved last year to dole out $200,000 for this. The official flyer, the event is June 17th, focuses on menstrual equity and the experiences of trans menstruators. A real thing. Why the media says Ebola is Trump's fault. Next.
When you're in the news business, it never stops. News is always breaking, and it's my job to get you the news, no spin, no BS. If you don't believe us, just watch us.
Watch Finity, weeknights, only on Newsmax.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Summer is coming fast. Now you can get your best summer body in just one visit to Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
This summer, I'm excited to not be covered up.
I've got abs again. Sono Bello put me in the right spot to just feel good again.
I feel beautiful. I went from this to this in just one visit.
I feel confident.
Micro laser technology permanently removes stubborn fat, tightens and tones skin in just one visit with less downtime.
My shirts were extra large. Now I'm wearing a bathing suit. It changed my life.
There's no more frustration, just permanent results.
My stomach is gone.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 5-star reviews and expert surgeons. Call now for your personalized consultation. That's over a $250 value. Free. Easy monthly payment options make your best body more affordable than ever. Step into summer with confidence. Call Sono Bello today.
We've been building chainsaws for over 100 years. Now that century of cutting comes in a mower. New blade, same bloodline. Right now, save $50 on select mowers. Steel.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta. proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about newer sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
We are going to start tonight with Ebola. Not because I want to scare you or sensationalize a scary-sounding virus.
The Ebola outbreak in Central Africa could become the deadliest on record.
The deadly Ebola outbreak, which is spreading rapidly.
Ebola and the concern with the World Cup being held in the U.S.
All right, so finally tonight, an Ebola outbreak in the Congo has the media going ballistic because it's the story that they absolutely love to tell. The U.S. is going to quarantine Americans who have been exposed in Kenya and reportedly send them from Africa to Europe for treatment. All of this after the United States, of course, massively cut foreign medical funding as DOGE and Common Sense came into Washington and looked at the landscape and said, oh, this is a country that's nearly $40 trillion in debt. We no longer have the money to play caretaker to the entire world. Let somebody else do that for a change. Let the Europeans do that. They're so liberal. They're so wealthy. Why can't they pay to protect Africa from all the various diseases that run through the continent? Well, over at The View, as you would expect, Whoopi Goldberg says the Trump administration over the past however many 15 months has just simply been murdering Africans.
This Ebola thing is something
and with the
that
withdrawal
was
of USAID also, those
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Don't you understand? We do all the things we do in the world as preventative. The laissez-faire
the
kind
disregard.
of attitude, the disregard for just about everything and everybody.
So we took this upon ourselves to handle diseases like this and to kind of protect the world from all these afflictions for a very long time. When we decide we can't do this any longer, we're the bad guys, we're the evil ones. Where is all the criticism of all the other wealthy nations that have never helped to do this job? And where's the criticism of those nations like the Europeans, the Chinese, a lot of places with money? China has huge investments in Africa. Where's the criticism of China for not taking care of these issues, not stepping in when we step back? Now nobody's doing it. No criticism there. We're just evil because we did it for so long and we don't want to do it any longer because we don't have the money to do it. We're the bad guys. And that's the way it works. And of course, our media are the ones perpetuating that. Isn't that something? Finity's up next, and we'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.